up? Welcome to the Blended Couple on Fire podcast. I am one of your hosts, Josh. I'm here with my beautiful, always wonderful Miss Christy. How are you, my love?
Good. How are you?
Good. Season 3, episode 15. Today's going to be fun because we get to talk about parenting and parenting styles with blended families, and that's coming up
Right now.
Are you a Christian and you are looking to take your faith, your family, and your future to the next level?
Then this is the channel for you.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. We hope everybody had an amazing Memorial Day weekend. We know we were busy.
That's
What do you say? What do you say? There's really nothing. She's speechless, folks.
We
speechless.
can't
What's up,
even
Mark?
begin to tell people about it because everyone that's known us for the past 10 years, they're like, you're always busy.
It's your own fault, people.
People are like, you're the busiest person I know.
Yeah, we were busy. It was good, though. I mean, the weather cooperated for the most part, which was pretty nice. And, we were able to go and have a cookout with some friends. And
We went to the movies twice.
Went to the movies twice, which, if you know Christy, that's like her favorite thing to do ever on the planet of the world. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, one of them was a scary movie.
It was. What was it? What was it called?
The Quiet Place Part 2.
The Quiet Place Part 2, which we watched in IMAX, which was pretty cool. But it's really funny. So we saw that on, what was it, Friday?
Mm-hmm.
So we went and seen it on Friday, and then
Monday.
Yesterday, right? Yeah, we went yesterday. Yesterday we went to the regular theater, but we chose to get the recliners, which you can do now. The theater has recliners in them, some of them. And so we watched Cruella de Vil, or Cruella, whatever.
Cruella, yeah.
Yeah. And Christy's like, okay, I love IMAX. It's like my preference, but they don't have recliners, so I don't think I ever want to do that again. She's like, let's sleep. I want to sleep.
When you're getting older and you're sitting for too long, it's like your knees start locking up, your butt goes numb. Like being able to recline back, it makes a difference.
Yeah.
In your comfort.
It is comfortable. I actually took my shoes off and was able to relax and stuff. So that is nice. And actually, Cruella was better than what I thought it was going to be. I know Christy didn't really think it was as good as what she was hoping for it to be, which is kind of different. But she really watches those kind of movies, and I really don't. So I think there were some differences in it that you didn't really care for. But
well, yeah, I just didn't. Well, I didn't like the actress that they had play her, and I'm a huge fan of 101 Dalmatians, and I'm don't want to feel sorry for the villain. Like she's a villain, So I don't know. I just didn't really like the way that they portrayed her, like that she's a dressmaker, and it's not from the original movie. Like in the original movie, she wanted to kill puppies is what she wanted to do. And so she was actually like an evil person. And this made it out to oh, she had a bad life and she's a dress designer. And I'm just like, okay.
Maybe that's Cruella part
It was
2.
good acting and stuff, of course, but Disney actually came out with 101 Dalmatians movie and 102 Dalmatians movie, and the lady that played Cruella de Vil in that did a very good job, and she's psycho, and she played in the movie Fatal Attraction. I'm pretty sure it was the same lady, and she's good at playing a psychopath.
She played a good psycho chick.
Yeah. But anyway, the movie itself was good. It was good. If I had never seen 101 Dalmatians before and didn't already have this visual in my head of what it would be, it's a good movie. So
all right, so with all that being said, if you don't mind, please hit the share button. Help us reach all the ends of Facebook. So we'd appreciate that. So today we really want to talk about parenting styles. Now, we had an honor of at our very first event that we were able to do last month. We were able to talk about parenting styles, but today we want to talk a little bit about the styles themselves, but then we want to kind of dive in a little bit and talk about some questions and some things that we want to talk about around the styles. So are you ready to get going?
Yes, and we do perfectly blended events. So if you get a little tidbit of this is just a small portion of what we talk about when at the perfectly blended events and what blended families have to deal with, and maybe some strategies and community that will help. Then talk to your local church or business about it, and we can come
Yeah, perfectlyblendedevent.com. If you go
Mhm.
there, you can watch a small video. We have a promotional video that plays on there, and you can just click a little button, send us some information if you want us to be in contact with you. All right, without further ado, we're going to talk about the different parenting styles. Okay, and there's really four main parenting styles, and we're just going to talk briefly about them. But the first one we want to talk about is authoritarian. As you can see in the wonderful picture, the kid looks really happy, and the dad looks even happier in that picture. So authoritarian, right? So this is really a lot of ways that Christy and I were brought up with a lot of authoritarian parenting in our life, where it says focus on obedience, punishment over discipline. And this is just really more of a do as I say, right?
Mhm.
Do as I say. I don't care about your opinion. I don't care about any of that stuff. So this is this type of parenting. So if you're this type of parent, pay attention because we're going to kind of go through the other three as well. Do you have anything you want to talk about this one?
No, I mean, when we get into our points, this is some of the things that we'll talk about. If you're blending a family, if one of you is this and your kids aren't used to maybe the step parent coming in as something different, or if you are one style and a step parent is coming into the picture and they are more like this,
Yeah.
it's going to be adjustment for your kids. But this is more like no flex at all, flexibility. It's just like these are the rules, and either you do it or you don't, and you're punished, and that's it. You don't get a say in it or whatever. And that's definitely how I was raised, for sure.
All right, for the next one is called permissive, right? Don't enforce rules. Kids will be kids. It's like, it's the mom and the dad that just says, oh, my kids, if they don't want, if they touch something and they're not supposed to, they'll know, like it'll hurt them and they'll figure it out. And, I know parents that would let their kids run around outside without shoes on in the winter and like, if they get cold, they'll come inside. And this is the type of parenting that doesn't really ever want to be the bad guy. That's what a permissive parent is. You never want to be that person. So you just kind of let your kids do what they want and they'll figure it out along the way. That's what a permissive parent is.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the third one, which is called uninvolved, right? This is the one that gives a little bit of guidance. Basically, just stay out of the way. Leave me alone. You come inside the room, they're like, leave the room. We don't care. Like, report cards doesn't matter. Like, this is the parent that's fully, completely detached, and doesn't really want to be involved in anything.
Well, and a lot of dads growing up in like our parents' era,
Yeah.
a lot of the dads were this. I mean, not to be like sexist or anything, but moms were the Susie homemakers that, made the dinner for the kids and all of that. And the kids just went outside and played, and the dads would be at work all day. They'd come home and they'd just be watching TV, and they weren't really involved in the children's life unless mom's like, don't make me call your dad and tell him when he gets home. And then they would spank you, type of thing.
Yeah, dad would come home and the belt would be laid out. And
yeah.
That's who would spank you. And then, that's the way it was done. So, okay. So the very last one I will show right here is called the authoritative. Now, if you've read Ron Deal's book and other blended family experts, they really talk about the authoritative is really being the best blend of all of it, right? It's, you create positive relationships and enforce rules. This is where you really, you ask your children's opinion, but at the same time, you hold them accountable and you do a lot of those things. And it's really a partnership with your children, including, your spouse. But when we talk about blended family stuff, that's why we want to talk about this, is because when we talk about blended family stuff, this is where it kind of can get real tricky, real messy, right? And this is why, Christy came up with some really, really fantastic points that we're going to talk about tonight. And I think it is powerful stuff, because when we're blending families, when we're taking one type of family that's already has kids that's been partially raised, or even a lot more than partially raised, one parenting style, and you have another family that's coming together with their own style, how do we get those to mix well, if at all? Like, what are some things with that? So the first point we really want to talk about is the different styles. Christy wrote down, what do you do when you and your new spouse have different parenting styles and the kids are used to yours, right? And the different types. So what do you do?
Well, I think it's important first to be honest with what type of parent you are. I mean, we showed you four. There's four parenting styles that there are, and only one is the one that is considered the best. And so we know that 3/4 of us may be that other style, and we just don't want to be honest with ourselves for how it is. So you need to start by saying, what type of parenting style do I actually have? Because those other three wouldn't even exist if those didn't exist. So
Yeah.
you know that there's people out there that are like those. I know me personally, I was an authoritarian, more of an authoritarian, just based off of that's the way I was raised, and kids need to respect and be quiet and do as they're told, and they get no say. And when Josh and I came together, it's like, I need to be honest. I never wanted to sit back and look like, oh, I don't take my kids' opinions into consideration. Yes, I do. Like, I care. And if I was really being honest with myself, I didn't. So I need to make sure that we start off of, okay, this is what type of parent I was. And that is also what type of parenting style their dad was. So when we blend our family and we get with a new step parent, and the step parent is more of the permissive parent, we needed to have lots of discussions of, we had to come together in the middle and figure out what is the best in the middle. And it is to take the kids into consideration and talk to them about their feelings, but ultimately they need to respect us as their parents and do as we say, but they are allowed to voice some concerns about it. Because a lot of times we're human too. We just get blinders on, or we're mad about something and we're not looking at the situation as a whole, or we're not hearing out. Maybe they didn't screw up on purpose this time. Maybe they really did try and they failed, and you need to hear them out, or you're setting them up for failure in dealing with life as they get older.
I think that's why it's so important, especially when you're blending two families together, to not be stuck and think that your way is the best way.
Yeah.
I think it's real easy to do that, right? You can think, well, man, my children are they're great the way that they are. And maybe things have worked out beneficial for your children, but now we're doing something that's really hard, and we're taking two different types of families and we're trying to bring them together. And most of the time, that's not because the kids want that to happen, right? It's the adults that want that to happen.
Yeah.
And now we have children that we're bringing into this picture, And in the beginning, of course, I thought my way was the right way, right? I had certain rules that I had in my house, but those rules were ones that I was comfortable with, right? And same with Christy. She had rules that she was comfortable with. Bedtimes were something that was, very strict with me. But at the same time, I would let my kids basically, have a say-so in anything they wanted to do other than that. So I was able to sell myself on certain things, right? Instead, when we got together, Christy and I both had to learn how to flex on certain specific topics and say, no, we need to do what works best for our family unit, which we'll get into in a second. But, paying attention to what your style is and saying, okay, this is appropriate for what's going to be best for our family, but this is my category, right? I was more permissive, even though I'm not comfortable saying that, because I'm not, right? I'm not, because I don't feel that I am, but in reality, I was much more permissive, and Christy was much more authoritarian, much more authoritarian, which she's more comfortable saying that. But it's just the way that it was, and it's I went the opposite direction of the way I was raised, where Christy went the same direction she was raised,
if not worse.
Maybe in some situations, right? But we have to be real and honest with ourselves, and then being real and honest with our new spouse about the direction we're going to go. And that's recognizing the type of parenting style that we have now currently.
I just thought I had made improvement because I was the disciplinarian even in my old marriage. And he would get upset if like I was punishing the kids and they were getting in trouble and they had an attitude about it, like they were mad.
Yeah.
And that didn't upset me. That was one thing that I felt like I made an improvement from my parents. Like if I was getting in trouble about something, if I even was mad about it or upset, I was angry or crying, I'd then get in even more trouble for being mad or for crying about it. And it's like I had an understanding.
Something to cry about.
Yeah. I felt like I had made improvement because my kids, like, if I punished them and they were doing what I was telling them to do, just because they were crying or they were upset about it, I didn't mind that, because I'm like, no, that's feelings. They're mad, that they're getting in trouble and they're being punished. They're allowed to be that way. So I felt like I had made progress, but I hadn't, because I really wasn't. I mean, I had from what I was raised, but I hadn't taken the time to really listen to them and allow them to feel heard, because a lot of times they're little humans, and human beings, us as a whole, we just want to be heard. It doesn't always necessarily mean that it's going to happen the way that we want it to happen, but we do want to at least have a voice, and that's important for kids too.
Yeah. And a lot of times too, when you're a permissive parent like me, is you don't want your kid to be upset with you. You don't want your kid to think badly, like you're a bad parent, right? And I think that's super easy, especially in blended families, is you want to make sure that your child isn't upset with you because they'll take the other birth parent's side. And that's the last thing you want, right? You don't
But you
want
were that way before we
you
got
don't want
together.
I was, but we were separate. I was separated from my ex before you and
Yeah.
I got together,
Yeah.
you know? So I've always wanted to like win my side of my kid,
Yeah.
you know, always. I mean, my ex and I split up when my son was 3 years old. And so from there on out until Christy and I got together, which he was probably around 9. Yeah. So, I mean, I had a lot of time in between where, you know, I got to be the super dad, you know, it was easy for me. I didn't ever bring any other, you know, women around my kids. I never did any of those things. So I was able to be super dad. And doing that, I was able to just give them whatever they wanted, anytime that they wanted, which is horrible because it's not teaching them anything, you know? And so when Christy and I got together, we were able to take, you know, her extreme and my extreme, and then through trial and error and patience and trying to figure it out, we realized like we have to come to a middle ground that works best for our children, not necessarily what we're most happy with, you know? And I think we've really, along the years, I think we've come to a pretty good ground in it. I mean,
Yeah. It was hard.
it was really hard.
It was hard because when him and I first got together, I mean, number 2 is the best style for your family. That was the point 2 that we were going to say. So, and you need to recognize what style is the best style. And both of you work on coming together to unite for that style. And that is what we did. We didn't know that it was called something specific like this, like
No, we didn't.
authoritarian.
No, authoritative.
Authoritative,
Yeah,
sorry.
that's
I
what
get them
Cassie was saying.
confused.
She's like, I'm definitely authoritative.
So authoritative is the one where we had to start coming together, and we didn't know there was names to it, but we naturally ended up more so there because he was a permissive and I was an authoritarian. It just gradually, when you're compromising and trying to figure things out, you naturally gravitate towards the middle. Now, the difficult thing with blended families is kids, when they're born with 2 parents.
Yep.
And from an infant, they're constantly learning. They're like little sponges. So they're learning how to adjust and handle the parenting styles of their parents. They know what to expect. I mean, this is something that's happening until, you know, they're crying, and then they get food, and then they start walking. They just learn. So the difficult thing with blended families is when you're coming together, your kids, depending on what age they are, ours were 14, 9, 8, and 6. My 2 that were 8 and 6, and his 2 that were 14 and 9, his 2 were used to permissive. My 2 were used to authoritarian. And we had to, because I'm like, whoa, I don't want my kids. We have to come together on it, because I can't be this way with my kids and you be that way with your kids and have a family unit that works well, because it definitely would be unfair. So we had to start down, and it was an adjustment period for me, and it was an adjustment period for him, because it was very uncomfortable for me to allow my kids to have a voice, because I instantly was thinking like they're being disobedient. Like, I'm asking them to do something, they're arguing with me, you know, and they're really not, if you handle it in a healthy way and you sit down and say, okay, tell me. So as long as we understand you're going to respect my decision, and, you know, I am the parent in the situation, and this is what the decision is going to be at the outcome. Whatever I decide is what's happening, but I do want to hear you. And they do see over time, occasionally you do change your mind, or you do say, hey, I'm sorry. You're right. You know, I overreacted in this situation, or you shouldn't get in trouble, or let's compromise, you know, on this. How about, I do know that you tried. And then with his kids, it was hard, more of a kickback from them, because they were used to really not getting in trouble. Not that they were bad kids. They were not. They were 14 and 9.
Sure.
They didn't get in trouble, but they didn't get in trouble. They were allowed to.
Or did they ever get told no?
Right. And so him and I would get in conversations, and I'm like, sometimes you can just say no, like, because they don't need to always be getting everything that they ask.
And that's
every
so
single time.
uncomfortable for me.
And he's like, I'm uncomfortable telling them no if I don't have a valid reason to tell them no. And I'm like, the valid reason is for them to learn that you don't always get what you want.
Yeah.
Like, every time you ask for it, if the answer is yes, that's just what you get used to. It's like, no, we're not going to do that today.
Yeah.
You know, and then they would be like, why? And they'd want to have like a whole conversation about it. And I'd be like, because the answer's no. That's why, you know?
And I always sold myself on like, if it's not hurting them, then why? Then the answer doesn't need to be no. Because I was raised with always no, never a yes. It was never a yes. It was always a no, right? So I went all the way the other way, which is horrible, right? Because we get told no, and right, and I think Cassie said, we're raised little snowflakes. Yeah, that's what would have ended up probably happening. I would have sold myself and saying that's not really what's going on. But that's the beautiful thing about allowing your partner to speak into you, and having a safe environment to do that with each other. Is she's like, no, it's okay that we tell them no. I don't want to tell them no because it hurts me. Well, okay, it's not necessarily always about me and what I want. What's best for our kids? And that really was a big twist for me personally, is like, okay, yeah, you're right. Like, I need to do what's best for these children, not necessarily what I'm most comfortable with. And we're not, one of us could have been an authoritative, but that isn't almost never the case, right? We have one perfectly balanced parent, and then the other parent isn't perfectly balanced. It's almost never that case. I mean, we have to figure it out. I mean, Christy goes, the second point is best style for your family. Yeah, we have to figure out the best style. Maybe it is a little more authoritarian or maybe a little more permissive, but ultimately we need to do what's best for our children, and then we need to decide together and grow together on that. When I'm thinking, back over the last, 10 plus years that Christy and I have been together, there's things that we do argue about. Probably the most we've ever argued about is about our children, but it's never been because of parenting styles. It's because we haven't communicated properly about some of the stuff that we've done, right? And then we're like, okay, well, I need to make sure that I communicate this better because of my mind still works sometimes in a permissive sense where, I think we shared it a long time ago or episodes ago where my son, graduated high school and we used Life 360, the app for the phones. And, he asked me, he come to me and goes, Dad, I haven't done anything to lose your trust. I really would be appreciative, if you took me off this app. And I'm like, sure. And I never talked to Christy about it. Well, that's undermining parenting. And that was easy for me because I'm like, he's right. He sold me on it, right? And permissively, I just want to be like, sure, buddy, it's whatever you want.
That's why he talks to him when I'm not around.
No, that's not why. But that's how it ended up happening, right? And that was a wrong move on my behalf. It's not because I wanted to undermine her. It's because it was easy for me to slip into the way that I used to parent instead of saying, all decisions need to halt. And then we talk about that privately and then we carry forward with it. That's why it's so important that we treat things that way because our parenting styles are different.
Yeah. And I still will fall into my kids, especially Garrett, because I'm always trying to think he's trying to do something. He'll come in and be like, Mom, I want to be like, no. And he'll be like, I haven't went to a friend's house. He's 18. Well, he's 19 now, but this is when he'd be like 17, 18. He'd be driving. And he's like, I haven't went to a friend's house and spent the night in months. Like, everyone's always coming to our house, Mom. And I'm like, I don't want you to. So
I'd be like, okay, come on.
So it's like this little controlling thing that I have, which isn't good. I mean, he's 19 years old and we have balanced each other really well because at 19 and he's graduating, he's out of high school. Yeah, he's graduated. His graduation's on June 7th, but he's done with school.
Yeah.
He still will text us and say, hey, do you care if I go over so-and-so's house later? So, I mean,
super respectful.
Yeah, we've done a really good job. Now, if I said, yes, I do care, there would be a long debate about it. But he still asks and wants to let us know what he's doing, which is super respectful. Josh and I have talked about, like, when I was 19, graduated high school. Well, first off, I was living with my grandparents, but I didn't tell my grandparents anything that I was doing.
And they didn't care.
They
didn't care that you told them.
Yeah. I wasn't even telling them if I was coming home, not coming home. Like,
and I was out by 18, I was out. So, we lived lives very differently. Very, very differently, So it's important that we say, hey, what works best for our family unit, but being honest about it, being truthful about, I don't like to admit that I'm a permissive parent, right? Because I'm a guy, I'm supposed to be authoritarian, and that's just not the truth. I want my kids to be able to want and do whatever it is that makes them comfortable and happy. I want them to be happy, but let's be real. What do they really know what's best for them?
Mm-hmm.
So I have to borrow that thunder of authoritarian of my wife and say, no, we need to make these decisions together behind locked doors, closed doors, sometimes locked. and decide on like, okay, what's best for these kids? You know, like, Christy, you're not really looking at this the right way. We went through this a little bit with grades, right? Like, okay, listen, you know, we're trying to win the war here. We're not trying to win every battle, right? We're not trying to say every grade has to be this or every paper has to be turned in. Like, it works with some of our kids, but not all of our kids. Like, our goal is for this kid to get through this class, you know? And so let's figure out how we're going to battle this.
You can't have an E.
You can't have an E, right? Because E doesn't stand excellent, okay? E is not
Basically
good.
the way that we're going.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's lots of comments going on, which I love. Yeah. She says that she is an authoritative, which is a goal, right? It's what both parents should do. But ultimately, the best thing to do is make sure you're behind doors and speaking together and taking each other into consideration as we're making decisions.
Well, and I think a good point that we need to make here, though, too, and we did cover this at our blended event, is a good rule of thumb, especially within the first couple of years of your relationship, is, and Ron Deal talks about this a lot, is the biological parent should be the parent that is disciplining their children. And the reason why that is because you want to bridge the gap of the family with the biological kids and the step parent. And it's called, Ron Deal words it very, very well. He calls it borrowed authority. So it's like, if you are getting ready to go to dinner and an aunt is coming over or a babysitter, and the biological parent looks at the kids and say, okay, they're in charge while I'm gone. So if the babysitter says it's time to go to bed, or the aunt or the grandma, it's time to go to bed. And if you don't obey them while I'm gone, I'll hear about it when I come back, and then you're going to get in trouble. It's no different for the step parent. So if the step parent is going to be at home with the kids, or they're the stay at home, the biological parent needs to give that power to the step parent, that authority in front of the kids.
Yes.
Like, they are in charge when I'm not here.
Yep.
They are the parental figure in the home. They are making the decisions. So you guys need to do what they say.
And that's not a given.
And it's not a given. You need to say that. And then when you come back home and he's like, hey, this, and this happened, I need to sit down and we need to talk about it behind closed doors. But then I need to sit down with my kids, with him present, but then be the one that's saying, like, listen, you guys didn't do this. You didn't do this.
Yeah.
You're going to get grounded, or you have to do an extra chore, like on our chore board.
You're not going to disrespect him or her in this situation. You're going to carry it out. You want to hear something hilarious. So I love what Stacy said. Stacy, this can't be true. Like, when my kids were younger, no was the first word out of my mouth. I do not believe that.
Yeah.
I don't believe that. I know Stacy. Stacy is like yes to everything. It's so funny. Cassie's like, seriously struggle with this and our poor kids because my hubby is worse. It is tough, right? And we have to understand that patience is a virtue. It is. It's hard. It's not always easy. It's not always easy. That's why behind closed doors decision making is so key, right? We're not spur of the moment making decisions. It's not either just an automatic yes or an automatic no. For me, it's always been an automatic yes. Sure, no problem. I don't mind. It's not hurting anybody, right? It's fine. To her, it's always an automatic no. No. Why? I don't know, because you need to hear no. I mean, and that's the way that we would do it. And instead, we're like, still today, kids are 19 years old, right? And they come to us and they ask us something. I'll say, all right, let me talk to Christy and we'll get back with you on that.
Not always, but
a lot of the time, though. Yeah. A lot of the time, like, I mean, we've gotten to a point now to where they know that. Like, they'll just say, my son Josh will be like, be like, I'll just text Christy about it, because they know. And it's important, though, that we do that for a lot of reasons. Number one, it gets to make a lot more sense, like, when you talk it out. We're sitting there and we're talking it out, and we're like, okay, that does sound like my decision was going to be a bad decision. And I'm glad that we talked this out, and what's best for the kids should always be the forefront of what the result is of that discussion. So it's so important that you do that. So important. It's true though. It was me being overprotective. Yeah. See, and that's powerful too, right? So my mom was like that. No about everything. No couldn't go stay at someone's house. No.
Now he was like that with Jordan about going to spend the night at someone's house.
I was, but
because she was a little girl.
She was a little girl, and I had that stuff happen, not to me personally, but to other women in my life. And it's happened to Christy, but I didn't know her yet. But with Jordan, it was like, I can't risk anything happening to her, like any type of abuse. So I was very, very, very protective of her, but I allowed her to be able to have her friends over to the house and stuff, so she didn't feel like she was really missing out on anything. Yeah, she didn't. But, those types of things, was very, and she thanks me today for that.
Yeah.
because she spent a lot of time with me those prime years, and so like my house was really the main house she stayed at for the most, mine and her grandmother's, but it was important though that I had a good reason for no on that. Okay, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Truly enjoying this podcast. Thank you, Cassie. Thank you so much for saying that. Awesome. Overproductive. Yeah. And it's easy to get overprotective.
Yeah.
You are a lot. I would say you're more overprotective than me.
Mm-hmm. I'm pretty protective.
Christy will cut somebody. Okay. Don't be messing with none of her kids or me. She'll stab you. But I think,
I'm pretty protective. I'm actually like that. Josh and I have talked about this. I'm actually like that for anyone that I truly, truly care for.
Yeah.
Anyone that I truly care for, including friends.
Very true.
If I get very overly protective of my friends that are like super just naturally sweet people.
Stacy.
I get very overprotective of them. So if we go out somewhere and I feel like someone's being rude or something to them, I will be a codependent in that instance.
She's a peacock, man. Peacock
and like caught right in front of them and be like, don't talk to her like that. You're gonna talk to somebody, you talk to me, type of thing. So I just think I get like that because it's also control issues though too.
Well, I think a lot of that results from the way that you were treated as a child too. Mm-hmm. And you're like, I don't want to allow that to happen to anybody else. I don't want anybody to feel that way. I don't want anybody to feel bullied or overpowered. And you're a very strong woman, very strong woman. I mean, I would even dare to even say as a woman, just as a person, like you're a very strong person.
Mm-hmm. I do not like bullies. I do not like people that are
take advantage.
Yeah, that are taken advantage of.
Yeah.
I don't like that. And I get worked up about it. Yeah. And I want to stand up for people. So I'm like, people need voices, just like blended families need voices, more of a community in the church community, in the Christian community, but in the church community that we're here. And these are issues that we struggle with. And these are things that the families struggle with. And they do want to put God first in their marriages and their lives. I mean, if we're Christians, which is what, our demographic is that we want is Christian blended families, you want God at the center of it. And God wants you to have a balance. Your kids are little people, but it also goes off of their age and what type of kid they're being at that time. I mean, are they being disrespectful? Are they getting in a lot of trouble? Maybe they don't deserve to have a voice in this instance, like, okay, you've messed up like 3 or 4 times, or you've lied to me the last 3 or 4 times we've had this conversation where you haven't earned that right now because you've been caught in 3 or 4 lies. Yep. So that right needs to be earned back. For now, the answer is no.
That's so
good. That's just stuff that you have to work through. And these are things that we need to deal with as blended families.
I think it's easy too. I love that you say that because I think it's easy to feel like we still owe our kids a voice. Mm-hmm. No, you're taking advantage of us at that point then.
And they will, because we have a lot of guilt.
Yeah, and they will.
That we're in a blended family and they may think that I love him more than I love them. Yes. Or we had a divorce and it's their fault. Like we have a lot of guilt on our shoulders because of that. And that actually starts swaying us into like a codependent relationship a little bit with our kids.
And I think it can drive a huge wedge between each other too when it feels like. That's why we have to be very careful the way that we parent each other's children, right?
Yeah.
So if I am trying to punish Christy's kids, right, like it can't be done that way. And I know, like, there's a thing called nacho, right? And it's a type of parenting style. Now I don't fully believe in it, but I do understand. I understand the premise of it, right? Mm-hmm. There is some groundwork that does make sense. So, when it comes to parenting, when it comes to like punishing our children. Right? We discuss the punishment in private. We then go and tell the children together what the punishment is, but I tell my children what the punishment is, right? I punish my children saying, we decided, and this is the punishment for your children. And Christy says, we decided, and this is the punishment that's going to happen, right? We didn't do that in the beginning. No, you know what I did? I was putting kids in corners. I was doing these things, and it was making Christy upset, and it was making her feel like, she was going to betray me if she argued with me. And, so it caused a lot of friction in the very beginning, and we had to learn this out the hard way, like the really hard way.
Because your loyalty in the beginning is torn.
Yes.
In a nuclear family, your loyalty really isn't torn. You know, it's like the moms.
Yeah.
The dad comes in and does the thing, and the mom's just like, you're not going to talk to the kids like that. I'll take care of it. Or the dad will leave, and you'll be like, don't worry, honey. You know, all this stuff, or vice versa, or whatever.
Yeah.
In blended families, it's torn because you don't want the kids to lose respect for him.
Yep.
If you undermine him, you're mad at him because he didn't talk to me about, okay, maybe I disagreed with this.
Yes.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
And then I want to go protect my kids.
Yeah.
So my loyalty is torn.
Yeah.
And it's like that in blended family. So it's very, very, you have to talk things out.
You have to. It has to be us first. We have to be very first when it comes to the way that we decide the punishment. And then the biological parent is the one that has to carry it out. It has to be done that way. It has to be done that way.
Oh, yeah.
And I love how you say, though, you know, that I think you said it was Ron Deal, though, the way that, oh my gosh, I forgot what I was going to say, how I was going to say that.
Oh, that's not like you.
I know, because it was so good too, and I forgot. But
well, really quick, I'm going to rewind. So the Nacho Kid things, if you guys haven't heard of it, you can look it up. And we're in some of those groups, you know, just because we like being part of this community.
Yeah.
And there is some of the things that I'm like, I don't agree with that. But with anything, with humans, they can take things to one extreme or the other. You know, I've seen some people post pictures of like the kids are completely disrespectful of the home and leave garbage everywhere in their rooms, and it's just a mess, and someone will take a picture of it and post like Nacho, like I'm not getting involved. And I'm like, that actually is bad for your marriage.
yeah.
Like a child shouldn't be allowed to disrespect the home, and that includes not picking up after themselves, like being dirty, leaving food everywhere, not doing their chores. Like you and your spouse need to come back and say, hey, this is my house too. And then that person needs to go discipline their kids. But that stems from the marriage first. So
yeah,
that's where you need to start.
Yeah, I think that drives something like that drives a larger wedge between the couple.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
we say blended couple on fire because the main thing that we care about is focusing on our marriage first, because we understand under the hierarchy of Christ, it tells us that that's what we're supposed to do if we want our family blessed because of it. And of course we do. So we want to make sure that we concentrate on those things that matter, and then everything else will flow from it. So that's why parenting styles and understanding what we were and how we naturally parent, because we've been able to figure that out because we've already had a family, and understand how are we going to blend that together, which really just leaves us into the very last point we want to make tonight. It's about, you know, you have to give time to adjust, which was really hard for us in the beginning.
It was.
We wanted results like that.
It was.
It was hard.
It was hard because, like I said, it's, you know, with the guilt too, it's, our kids were little. I mean, Jordan was 14. It's not like she was wanting to sleep with us or anything.
Right.
But little Josh and him had always been sleeping together in the same bed.
Yeah.
And my two kids and both of my kids slept with me. And so it was a huge adjustment. And that came with a lot of guilt, because then, like, especially my littlest one, he was only 6, and he would want to come in and sleep next to me, and he was uncomfortable with it. And so then I actually started getting some resentment, because he's like, I don't want him sleeping in here, because he was uncomfortable with it. Well, then I was starting to have resentment about it, because I'm like, that's my baby, and if he wants to lay in here with me, he can lay on my side with me. But now that's maybe not nurturing him the way that he needs to get nurtured, because I was an authoritarian parent, but I also was huge about hugs, kisses, and I love you. And I wanted my kids to always know that, still to this day, without a shadow of a doubt, that they will be loved unconditionally no matter what.
Yeah, they don't leave the room without you saying I love you.
Yeah. I don't, they have to know. They have to. And that's my job as their parent, to know that. And my parents didn't do that for me. They didn't let me know without a shadow of a doubt, because they didn't. And that doesn't comprehend or compute in my brain, but my kids needed to know, me personally.
No, I agree. And I think, you know, when we talk about giving it time, we did not, right? We jumped right into it, right? And we had all these expectations of, like, I need Christy to like me, and I want Christy to love me. And what we did instead is we just completely blocked out The children, when it came to certain things, when it came to connections with us, it's not that we left the kids out or said we're going to do this relationship without you.
No, we were always with our kids.
We were always with our kids, and we always have been with our kids.
Mhm.
But we didn't meld things together like Ron Deal says. We didn't use a crock pot method. We went straight microwave.
Yeah.
Right? We're like, okay, you guys,
We're family.
Yep, we're family. You're going in this room. You're going in this room. And this is where you guys are sleeping, and this is where we'll be,
Yeah.
and that's what we're doing. And that was just
That's not fair.
That was not fair. It was not fair. Now they turned out okay, right? Everything was great. I think everything is as good as it possibly could be. But if we could do it over, we wish we would have had someone that would have shared that with us. That's why we want to talk about these things. It's so important that we know in the beginning. That's why Christy and I are in the middle right now of creating a premarital course for strictly for blended families. We can't find anything online that's appropriate for blended families in premarital. Like, what
questions that you should ask each other?
So big, right? So huge. And it's so important that, man, I wish we would have known this beforehand, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the divorce rate of second marriages is almost 70%.
Mhm.
And they say that if you could find some type of counseling or coaching before, you can possibly lower that by 40%. Like, this is information that we wish we knew, not just how to communicate better. Like, we got that. Each of us did counseling in our first marriages, hence our first marriages, right? We need information and stuff that's going to help us now. And that's why we're like talking about these things. Like, this is the stuff we need to know, like, want to know early on so we can help nurture this relationship that we have with our kids, with our spouses, with ourselves, all the way around. So parenting styles are tough.
Yeah, and
Tough.
I don't think, and we mentioned this at our Perfectly Blended event if you were there, but one thing that needs to get taken into consideration with parenting styles too is if you have a child that dramatically switched roles, you need to take that into consideration when you're trying to discipline them, because they may be struggling with a lot more than any of your other children. And we experienced this with my biological oldest son, and we mentioned it, like, he had Jordan, who's the oldest. She's the only girl. She remained the only girl, and she remained the oldest. Little Josh remained the second oldest and still the oldest boy.
Yep.
And then my youngest, Graydon, remained the youngest. Now, granted, he had a couple other siblings like everybody else that got added to the mix.
His position was the same, though.
But he remained the youngest.
Yep.
Garrett went from being the oldest alpha male of my nuclear family to being the third oldest, second oldest male in our blended family.
Yeah.
And we didn't find this out until we didn't even catch it until like a year and a half ago.
Yeah, it was like a major demotion for him.
And so basically almost our entire relationship, that wasn't thought of, taken into consideration.
Oh.
And I think we would have done things a little bit differently when it came to him and him having a voice and talking to him.
Very
Both of
true.
us would have, if we would have recognized that. And
Yeah.
we didn't recognize it until like a year and a half ago. And he's 19 now, which means he would have been 17 and a half. And he was 8 when we got together.
Yeah.
So that needs to be taken into consideration when you're talking about disciplining the kids and blending the family and doing all these things. Is a child starting to act out even more? Did they have a significant role change within the family? You have to think about that and care about that. And we didn't, because we didn't know.
No, we didn't know. And talking about it, though, is the key, right? It's
Yeah.
talking about it and saying, hey, this is real, what's going on. My kid's not just being a brat, right? Or your kid isn't just being a brat. Like, let's figure out what's going on. These kids, we're asking them to do something. This is not something they elected to do. It's something that we've told them now they have to do. They have to be part of this.
Right.
Sorry, Garrett, you're now the middle child.
Yeah.
Even the second oldest boy. And my son was very aggressive, right?
Mhm.
And Garrett just wanted everybody to like him. So it really worked very hard against Garrett, like all the way against Garrett. Now, Garrett turned out to be an awesome kid. He's super outgoing. I mean, he's, he has such a great personality when it comes to a lot of things. It's not like we broke the kid. Okay. We didn't break him.
We had a lot of struggles with him, though.
But we had a lot of struggles, right? Which we would have handled things much differently if we would have known what we know
had
now.
A deeper understanding.
Probably one of the major things, that I really wish, and we've talked about this even recently, that we wish we would have done things differently, is that we wish we would have spent in the beginning, we would have chosen alone time with our own kids.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't, because we were afraid that was going to drive a bigger wedge in between us and our family. And it really would have done the opposite of that. And we didn't know that then.
And there's studies that have shown it.
Yeah. And so, if we can encourage you with anything, if you are in the beginning stages, spend some special time. Now, we say beginning stages because as time goes on, you don't need to spend as much alone time with your own kids. If you want, you could spend alone time with each child, right?
Yeah.
Including hers and mine, we could do that. But in the beginning, we want to make sure our kids understand that we're not deserting them.
And it helps bridge the gap.
It does.
Of them like having trust of the step parent and the step siblings. They are going to feel more comfortable to voice what their feelings in a safe place because they feel safest with you. They don't feel as safe with the step families yet. That hasn't been earned. It actually is such a powerful thing that we didn't do.
We did not. We completely deserted that because we assumed that we knew best, and we didn't know.
We didn't.
That's why we want to advocate so strongly for blended families. Is there's really some small micro things that we can do in the beginning that can make a huge difference in the long run. A huge difference in the long run. You don't need to take 10 or 11 years to figure it out. You don't have to let your child, all of their teens go away before it's maybe it's a small adjustment in the beginning, but one of the biggest takeaways that I have for parenting is be open-minded. You have to be open-minded. Most parenting, when we go from one relationship to the next, we become closed-minded. This is the way I've always done it. This is the way I'm always going to do it. Don't be that way. Be open-minded. Understand that you are blending two completely separate families to one now, and compromise is a must. It has to happen. And that's probably for me personally, that's probably one of the biggest things I can say is you have to be open-minded. Men, you have to be open-minded. And women, I know you get very strong, very, very sure of the way that your children need to be treated. And I'm not saying they need to be mistreated by your spouse. What you have to do is say that it's okay. Take it from a permissive. Okay, most women are, so I can take it from me. We have to do what's best for our children. So be open-minded. Be open-minded.
I agree with that thing.
Anything else you want to say before we close this bad boy out?
Nope.
So we hope you enjoyed this. We're going to continue on with the blended family content. We have a whole schedule of stuff that we've come up with. And don't forget, if you want more information about our events, perfectlybblendedevent.com, do that. Podcasts, if you want to listen to us instead of watching us here on Facebook, you can find us anywhere podcasts are available. Plus, we upload stuff on YouTube as well. That's Blended Couple on Fire. We want to thank everybody for being here. Thanks for hanging out with us for this hour, and we'll see you guys. Ooh, what's up?
You didn't tell them who we're having on next week.
Oh, I'm not. Oh, you want to tell them? Tell them.
Yes.
Okay.
Ron Deal is being back on our podcast next week.
That's going to be exciting because they had a big event that they did, and he has a whole bunch of new data and stuff that he wants to bring, and he's going to share with us. Yeah, so you're
going to get lots of learning.
Yeah, so you're going to be prepared to be learned. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, babe.
And taught to. No,
I thought you were going to give me a second to.
No, I'm sorry.
So it's okay.
Anything else?
No.
Okay. All right, guys. Have a great night. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.